I thought therapy would save our marriage. My wife and I were falling apart, and Dr. Adrian Wolfe seemed like the answer, calm, confident, the kind of man who made you believe he understood everything. But the more we talked, the closer they got. Until one day, I realized the therapist wasn't fixing us. He was rewriting us, recording our secrets, twisting our lives into his next best-selling book. That's when I stopped being his patient and started becoming his punishment. Boston wears winter like a press suit, clean lines a little too crisp, and always one size tighter than you remember. I was late leaving the office, caught under the blue wash of evening that makes the Charles look metal, and the Prudential's lights float like little hymns. By the time I reached our brownstone in Beacon Hill, the windows were glowing the way they do in real estate brochures, warm and welcoming from the sidewalk. From the inside, warmth is just a thermostat number and a silence you can hear. "Hey," I called, hanging my coat on the same hook I always missed the first time. "In the kitchen," Claire answered. She said it like we were two people on a stage marking our cues. I followed the smell of roasted carrots and thyme into a tidy scene. 2 plates, 2 forks, the bottle of wine she likes when she's trying to make something feel special. She was leaning against the counter with a tea towel over her shoulder, hair pinned up with one rebellious curl dangling near her cheek. The kind of detail that used to undo me. "How was your day?" she asked, not turning yet. "Structural surprises at a Beacon Street retrofit," I said, setting my messenger bag on a chair. "Found a steel beam where a brick pier was supposed to be. The kind of surprise that eats a week and a half." She smiled without teeth. "So good day, architect things," she said, and finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired in the corners, and I realized mine probably were too. We ate, but it was ritual more than dinner. The plates met the table with practiced little sounds. We took turns asking safe questions and offering safe answers. I told her about a client's dog that had learned to nudge the conference room door open. She told me a freshman had turned in a charcoal study of a toaster that looked like grief. We laughed. It didn't reach anything vital. I could feel the problem in the spaces between things. Fork to plate, plate to sink, sink to dishwasher. The choreography of people who won't bump into each other because they've both memorized the steps. After we rinsed the dishes and agreed without saying so that dessert would not be happening, we moved into the living room. The radiator hissed like a sleepy cat. Claire tucked her legs under herself on the couch, palms around a mug she didn't really want. I stood at the window and watched our reflection in the glass. 2 figures in a narrow frame, the city posted behind us like a postcard. "You're miles away," she said. "Only a few blocks," I said. "I was thinking about the retrofit. It's messy." She nodded. "Everything is messy." That might have been the moment to cross the room and sit beside her, to touch her knee or ask the question that scares both of us. Where did we go? Instead, I said nothing, and the silence sucked more air out of the room. Claire set the mug down. "Ethan, we should try therapy," she said, looking straight ahead at the empty TV. "I found someone. A couples specialist. He's highly recommended." It caught in my throat before I could stop it. "Okay," I said. And then, because that didn't sound like a person, I tried again. "If you want that, we can try." "I want something that isn't this," she said, and her voice frayed on the last word. "I don't want us to keep pretending this is just a busy season." I could have argued. I could have told her how my father handled distance by building a wall with his hands and naming it work. I could have told her that I've always been easier with steel than with softness because steel doesn't need you to say the right thing at the right time. I could have told her that when I look at her, I still see the girl in the MFA's contemporary wing who laughed at a sculpture that looked like a chrome sandwich and said, "Dead serious, this is either genius or fraud." I wanted to say all of it. Instead, Wednesday, 6 o'clock, she said. "His name is Dr. Adrian Wolfe. On Tremont." "Wolfe," I repeated, as if trying on a coat. She watched me. "Please come with an open mind." "I'll bring 2, I said, and got the ghost of a smile for the effort. That night, I lay awake beside her and listened to the radiator tick down and the city go soft. At some hour past since, Claire shifted closer, her knee finding my shin under the covers like it remembered the way. I waited for the chemistry to arrive, like weather, like a bus you hear 2 blocks away. It didn't. Or maybe it did and I missed it. I counted my breaths until they blurred. Dr. Wolfe's office looked like a magazine idea of calm, charcoal walls, a Persian rug the color of old wine, low lamps that put gold ripples on the floor. Someone had decided books were comforting and stacked them everywhere. Low shelves, window sills, a neat tower beside a leather chair with a throw folded just so. A record player in the corner hummed faintly. White noise, he would tell us later, for privacy. I believed him because I preferred to believe things I could see. Ethan and Claire, he said, rising from behind a desk too clean to do work on. He was taller than I expected, with the kind of posture that says I've never had to persuade a room to hear me. Mid-40s, dark hair threaded with gray at the temples, a trim beard that probably cost more than my haircuts. His eyes did that quick, comprehensive scan that doctors and customs officers share. Noted and filed. Dr. Wolfe, Claire said, and her voice went bright. Not flirty. No, not that. But bright the way you get when someone seems like an answer. We sat. The couch was firm, prompting you to sit up straight and be your best self. Wolfe took the leather chair, not behind a desk, but angled toward us. Triangulation. So, he said, hands steepled. I like to start with why. Not the philosophical why. The practical. Why are you here this week and not last week or next? Claire went first. I'm afraid the way we live now will become the way we are, she said. And I don't want to wake up in 10 years and be polite strangers. A careful little nod from Wolfe. And you, Ethan? Because I hate failing, I thought. Because I was raised to fix the thing in front of me, and now the thing is a person and the wrench doesn't fit. Because every time I plan a sentence, for her it turns to sawdust in my mouth. Because I want it not to be like this, I said instead. Because she asked. Wolfe smiled, small and private, like we'd offered him 2 puzzle pieces, and he could already see the picture. Good, he said. Honesty counts more than eloquence. He asked the intake questions I assume they all ask. How long we'd been married, 7 years. How we met an exhibit opening at the MFA. I spilled wine on her program. Children, no. Family models of conflict, hers. Storm, mine, freeze. He asked about work. When Claire talked about teaching, her hands animated the air, sketching a thing she could feel. When I talked about architecture, I heard myself turn precise, safer in dimensions than in feelings. At some point he stood, crossed to a shelf, and switched the white noise machine from whisper to hush. On the edge of the same shelf, behind a bookend shaped like a gull, I saw the nose of a small black recorder. Not hidden, exactly. Placed. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. I cataloged it and filed it away. Let's do a quick exercise, Wolfe said, settling back. Claire finished the sentence. I feel most unseen by Ethan when. She exhaled through her nose. When he comes home already somewhere else, she said softly. Like his body made it to the house, but the rest of him is stuck in a blueprint. Ethan, Wolfe said, finish this one. I feel most judged by Claire when. I glanced at her. She lifted her chin an inch, braced. When she watches me look for a way to say something right, I said. And I can tell she already sees the wrong version coming. Claire closed her eyes like it stung and nodded like it landed. Wolfe made a single mark on a yellow legal pad. The page looked mostly blank. Maybe his marks were for him, not for us. We spoke for an hour the way you speak in rooms where someone is paid to listen. Haltingly at first, then with a momentum that feels almost like courage. Wolfe diffused the easy minds and left the complicated ones untouched, like a man who knows which wires he wants to cut later. He laughed at one of Claire's jokes about grading art as if it were math. He agreed with me about how Boston zoning boards breed a certain kind of moral injury. He found the islands where each of us lived and built a little bridge between them, 2 planks, no handrail. At the end, he recapped in a voice that made everything sound solvable. You're both articulate, which is a blessing and a trap, he said. You construct explanations instead of experiences. Ethan dissociates into competence. Claire chases intensity to feel alive. There's no villain in that pattern, only unmet needs. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. If you're willing to do the work, I'm optimistic. The word work pulled me like a magnet. A problem set. A plan. I nodded before I realized I was nodding. Claire's face opened the way it does when a student suddenly sees the negative space in a drawing. The moment meaning flips. Same time next week. Wolfe asked, already at his calendar. I also recommend one individual session each. It accelerates the process. Okay, Claire said, quick, eager. I watched the speed of it and felt the smallest pull in my gut, like a current you only notice when you stop swimming. We scheduled. We stood. Wolfe shook my hand, then Claire's, 2 beats longer. Professional, still. But I saw the way he held her eyes, like sharing a private conference in a room full of people. Back on Tremont, the air was thin and shining. We walked in parallel, our steps finding a rhythm they haven't had in months. Claire slipped her hand through my arm at the crosswalk the way she always used to, and for a block I let myself believe in momentum. He seems good, she said. He seems practiced, I said, and kept my voice flat so it wouldn't sound like a judgment. She laughed. You hate new things. I build new things for a living, I said. That's different, she said, and bumped her shoulder against me. The gesture was light, old, familiar enough to be dangerous. At home, she went upstairs to change, and I lingered in the hallway where the heat doesn't quite reach. I took my phone out to add the next appointment and found I'd already received a reminder email. Efficient. The subject line read, Next steps. The body was 3 lines. Grateful to meet you both. Looking forward to the work. Please complete the attached inventories separately and bring them to our next session. There was an attachment and a courteous signature. And at the bottom, in a lighter gray my finger almost missed, a line about consent to recording sessions for quality improvement. I stared at it for a second too long, then tucked the phone away like I'd grazed something live. Claire called my name from upstairs. I said coming, and went up to a life I wanted to keep. In the bathroom mirror, my face looked like an honest man's. Decent bones, good intentions, a fatigue I'd chalked up to deadlines and now wasn't so sure about. I splashed water, straightened, and told the version of me in the glass that this was a plan, not a surrender. He didn't argue. Later, when the lights were out and the windows were black rectangles and Claire's breath had evened, I lay awake and listened to the building. Pipes adjusting. Someone's shoes on the landing. The city stitching itself into its night shape. Somewhere on Tremont, a machine whispered to itself behind a bookend shaped like a gull. And I told myself that what I felt was only the memory of a sound. We had started, and something, somewhere, had started watching. Dr. Wolfe said the second session would feel safer. He didn't mean safer for me. The Tremont office looked different in daylight. The blinds were half drawn, diffusing the sun into polite amber, and the white noise machine hummed like the ocean recorded through glass. Claire sat forward on the couch this time, her hands clasped like a student who'd done the homework. I sat back, elbows on knees, pretending comfort. Let's start where we left off, Wolfe said, the leather of his chair creaking softly. Last time, we named distance. Today, let's look at what that distance protects. He had that talent therapists cultivate, pausing just long enough to make silence feel expensive. Claire inhaled. I think I protect myself from disappointment, she said. If I expect less, I can't be hurt. By Ethan? Wolfe asked. She nodded. He doesn't mean to. But he has this calm. It's like I'm shouting in a museum. The metaphor landed too well. Wolfe leaned forward, voice velvet soft. And what happens when you shout? I stop, she said. Eventually I stop. I watched the way he looked at her, not inappropriately, not yet, but with a kind of sustained attention you only give when you're trying to make someone feel seen. He was good at it. Maybe too good. When it was my turn, I said, I protect myself from chaos. I build order. If something's wrong, I fix it. Even when the something is a person? Wolfe asked. I hesitated, especially then. He smiled faintly, like he'd just heard the thesis of a story he'd read before. That night, we walked home through light rain that caught the city in reflections, storefronts doubling themselves, headlights stretching like threads of molten gold. Claire looked lighter. I did not. He's good, she said. He doesn't make me feel crazy for feeling things. You're not crazy, I said. I know. But you make me feel like emotions are inconvenient. I wanted to argue, but she was right. I managed, I'm trying. She reached for my hand. That's why I still want this. Her hand was cold, but sure. It should have comforted me. It didn't. It felt like holding someone who was halfway through letting go. The third session came sooner than I expected. Wolfe had rearranged the seating slightly, a subtle shift that made him closer to Claire and angled away from me. I wondered if he knew how deliberate it looked. He asked about our week, our intimacy, our conflicts. Claire laughed at something he said about trust being a muscle that atrophies in silence. I saw the laughter reach her eyes. He handed us each a small notebook. Journals, he said. Write whatever you don't say out loud. I read excerpts only if you agree. I took mine. Claire held hers like a gift. Halfway through the session, Wolfe's phone buzzed on the desk. He ignored it. Claire smiled. He smiled back, a shared flicker that lasted a breath too long. And that's when I knew. The danger wasn't that Claire might fall for him. The danger was that she already had, in that subtle, silent way people fall before they ever touch. At home, she hummed while cooking. She hadn't done that in months. Therapy's working, she said. Don't you feel it? Something's working, I said. She kissed me lightly on the cheek. You're cynical. That's your defense mechanism. I smiled because she was quoting Wolfe. Later, I lay awake again, watching her sleep. Her phone blinked once with a notification, a message preview I wasn't supposed to see. Adrian Wolfe, you were brave today. The words burned themselves into the dark like an afterimage. I closed my eyes and told myself it was professional. Encouragement. Routine. But under the hum of the radiator, I could still hear the whisper of the white noise machine, a faint echo that followed me home. Rain had a way of flattening Boston's noise. It made the city sound honest, tires hissing, crosswalk signs ticking, umbrellas bumping like apologies. By Thursday, the sky had turned the color of concrete, and Claire's laughter had turned into something private. I noticed it first at dinner. She smiled at her phone the way she used to smile at me. Not a wide grin, just that soft curve that lives somewhere between amusement and affection. Who's that? I asked, keeping my voice level. She didn't look up. Lena. We're talking about the student exhibition next week. Lena. Sure. I nodded, pretending to taste the pasta. The phone buzzed again. She turned it face down. The lie was small, practiced. I didn't even blame her for it. Lies are just the shadows of what people can't say out loud. At work, I started checking my phone more than I used to. I'd catch myself staring at the screen, waiting for something I couldn't name. A text, a call, an answer. Instead, I got a calendar notification. Individual session, Dr. Wolfe. Friday, 5 p.m. I almost canceled. Then I thought of Claire's smile, the one that belonged somewhere else now, and I decided to go. Dr. Wolfe's office was quieter than before. No music this time. Just that hum again, low and steady, like a thought he wanted you to forget you were having. He gestured to the couch. Ethan, I'm glad you came alone. How have you been processing things? Processing, I said. That's a word architects use for demolition. He smiled, pen tapping his notebook. You think this is demolition? I think my wife is different. In what way? She seems happier. Just not with me. He nodded, thoughtful. Claire is reconnecting with her emotions. Sometimes that energy feels displaced until the relationship catches up. It sounded rehearsed, polished. He studied me for a moment. You strike me as a man who keeps his pain organized. I build structures, I said, even for the things that break. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What would happen if you stopped fixing for one day? Something would collapse. Maybe something should, he said softly. The way he said it, it wasn't advice. It was permission. That night, Claire came home late. She said she stayed to help a student finish a portfolio. Her hair was still damp, her cheeks flushed. I wanted to believe her. I almost did. She poured herself a glass of wine and asked, "How was your solo session?" "Fine," I said. He thinks I should let go of control. She smiled faintly. He told me the same thing. Something in my chest tightened. He told you? Oh, I mean in general, she said quickly. He says I try too hard to fill the space you leave empty. The phrase had Wolfe's rhythm all over it. I knew his voice even when she used it. Later, while she showered, I opened her phone. I told myself it was curiosity, not suspicion. Her messages were mostly clean, students, colleagues, Lena. Then near the bottom, one name, Adrian W. A short thread. Recent. Adrian, you did well today. You're starting to breathe again. Claire, I feel like I can actually talk when I'm with you. Adrian, that's the point. Claire, Ethan's trying, but it's complicated. Adrian, it always is. Sleep well, Claire. You deserve it. No emojis. No kisses. Just words. But they were worse than any affair. They were intimate. I didn't sleep. I lay there, counting the seconds between her breaths, each one steady, untroubled. My mind built and rebuilt the picture. Her in that leather chair, the way he leaned forward, his voice turning velvet at the edges. It wasn't the sex I imagined. It was the trust, the surrender, the emotional undressing. By dawn, I had a decision. I would not confront her. Not yet. People reveal themselves better when they think no one's watching. So I watched. At the next joint session, Dr. Wolfe greeted us with that same calm warmth. He looked at Claire first, then me. Always her first. Let's talk about vulnerability, he said. What does it mean to feel safe in front of your partner? Claire said, to not be afraid of being seen at my worst. I said, to be seen and not used. He smiled slightly. Interesting distinction. His gaze drifted to Claire again, and for a moment the air shifted. Something invisible, charged. She didn't look away. I did, because I suddenly understood. This wasn't therapy anymore. It was seduction with paperwork. And I wasn't just losing my wife. I was being written into someone else's story. The next Friday arrived with that strange, brittle sunlight Boston gets in March. Half promise, half warning. Claire left early for her private session. She didn't say with whom. She didn't have to. I waited 15 minutes after the front door closed before I followed her. She'd taken the car, I walked. The cold bit through my coat, but the anger kept me warm enough. On Tremont, the office building sat quietly between a florist and a Pilates studio, as if therapy were just another kind of bodywork. I waited across the street, hands in my pockets, watching the second floor window glow faintly behind the blinds. At 5:47 p.m., the light went off. Claire appeared a minute later, coat loose, hair slightly tousled, a kind of softness in her face that I hadn't seen in months. She stopped at the corner, texted someone, and smiled. Then she walked away. I should have gone home. Instead, I went in. The front door was unlocked, too trusting for a man like Wolfe. The receptionist had already left, leaving behind the faint smell of cheap lavender lotion. I climbed the stairs, past a framed print of a wave and the quote, "Healing begins where fear ends." His office door was closed, but the lights were still on. Through the frosted glass, I saw the outline of the same shelves, the same chair, the same immaculate geometry. I knocked once. No answer. Then I tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, the air was still warm, heavy with sandalwood and something more expensive beneath it. His desk was neat, too neat. A legal pad. A fountain pen. A mug half full of something gone cold. I was about to leave when I saw it. On the shelf behind the desk, half hidden behind a small sculpture of a bird, sat a digital recorder, black, square, with a tiny red light glowing steady. Recording. My stomach turned. I reached up and pressed stop. The light died. Then, almost without thinking, I opened the drawer beneath it. Inside, a small box labeled Session Archive. There were dozens of SD cards, each marked with names and dates. Cole, 2 out of 3. Cole, 2 out of 10. Cole, 2/17 individual. I slid one into my pocket before I could talk myself out of it. Then I left, as quietly as I'd come. At home, Claire was in bed reading. She looked up surprised. "You're early," she said. "Yeah. They let us go. I was tired." She smiled faintly. Therapy's working, I think. Maybe, I said. You feel lighter. I do. She closed the book. Adrian says. She stopped herself too late. I nodded. Adrian says a lot of things. She hesitated, then frowned. Please don't do that. Do what? Make it sound like something it's not. I almost asked what exactly it was, but the recorder in my pocket was already heavier than the truth she might offer. Good night, Claire, I said. She turned off the lamp without another word. When she fell asleep, I went to my office. My hands shook as I slid the card into my laptop. The file list appeared immediately. Session _0217_8 wave. I pressed play. Adrian Wolfe, softly. Tell me what you need, Claire. Claire, I need to feel wanted. Not just useful. Wolfe, by Ethan? Claire, by someone who actually sees me. Wolfe. And if that someone were here now? Claire, after a long pause, he is. The silence that followed was worse than any words. You could hear breathing. Hers, quick and uneven. The sound of movement. A chair creaking. Then Wolfe's voice again, lower now. Wolfe, you're safe here. You deserve to feel alive. My pulse hammered. I stopped the playback, breathing hard through my teeth. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. I wanted to hit something that could bleed. But more than anything, I wanted to understand. I rewound 30 seconds and listened again, this time noticing details. The faint hum of that white noise machine, the rustle of his sleeve against leather, Claire's sigh when he said alive. He'd seduced her clinically. Not like a man. Like a surgeon, precise, deliberate, sterile. The next morning, I called my old college friend, Mason Reed, now a private investigator in Cambridge. Mason, it's Ethan Cole. Jesus, Ethan. Haven't heard that voice since you bailed on my wedding. What's up? I need help, I said. Off the record. That's my favorite kind of help. I think my wife's therapist is sleeping with her. A long pause. Then that's new. What do you want me to do? Find out who he really is. Everything, degrees, lawsuits, complaints, books, whatever. Mason whistled. Sounds like you've got a story brewing. I looked out the window. Claire was in the garden, pruning something that didn't need pruning. You have no idea, I said. That night, I copied the file to a USB drive and hid it in a drawer beneath my drafting table. Then, I deleted it from a laptop. Not out of mercy. Out of strategy. If Wolfe was playing a game, I'd play it better. But for the first time since the sessions began, I realized something that made my hands go cold. He wasn't just studying us. He was writing us. And I was beginning to wonder who the audience was. Boston's spring thaw comes like a false apology. The snow melts, the city softens, and everyone pretends winter didn't leave bruises. But the ice never really goes. It just hides underground, waiting for your step. By the time the tulips showed up in the public garden, I'd listened to that recording 12 times. Every breath, every pause, every sigh that wasn't mine. Mason called me on a Tuesday. Your guy Wolfe, he said, voice low like he'd found something radioactive. He's clean on paper. PhD from NYU. Wrote some academic stuff about therapeutic intimacy. But there's chatter. 2 complaints, formal ones, filed and dismissed. Both female clients. Both claiming inappropriate boundaries. What kind of boundaries? The kind that get you disbarred in a different profession. He sent me PDFs. I opened them, and there it was. Legal phrasing dressed to sound neutral, but dripping accusation. Unethical physical contact. Manipulative language under therapeutic pretense. Exploitation of emotional vulnerability. I didn't tell Mason I already had proof in stereo. Want me to dig deeper? He asked. No, I said. I know enough. That night, Claire made dinner again. Her way of pretending everything was still reparable. She lit candles, poured wine, hummed while plating the pasta. Normalcy as performance art. You've been quiet lately, she said. Thinking. About us. Yes. I set my fork down. And about Adrian Wolfe. The name hit like static. She froze. Then forced a small laugh. You make it sound like a conspiracy. Maybe it is. She looked at me, measured, defensive. He's my therapist, Ethan. Ours. Don't do this. Claire, I said, calm but sharp, I know about the recordings. The color drained from her face. What? I was in his office. I found the device. He records every session, every word. She blinked, slow, like her mind was buffering. That's impossible. He said everything is confidential. Confidential? Yes. Private? No. I slid the USB drive across the table. Listen to it if you need proof. She didn't touch it. You went through his office? I went through hell, I said. His office was easier. The silence cracked open. Finally, she whispered, I didn't know. I believed her almost. Her voice carried too much confusion, not enough guilt. But I also knew she wasn't innocent. We moved to the living room. No candles, no wine. Just truth, naked and cold. I need you to tell me what happened, I said. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering though the room was warm. It started after one of our sessions. I stayed behind. He said I was holding back, that I needed to be honest about what I wanted. I said I wanted to feel seen. Her voice broke. He told me he saw me, she said. Not like a husband does, but like someone who understands. And then, her eyes glistened. He kissed me. I didn't stop him. I should have, but I didn't. I exhaled slowly, fighting to keep my voice steady. And how many times? Twice, she said. After sessions. Then I told him I couldn't. That it was wrong. I nodded, absorbing the words like impact. And he accepted that. She hesitated. He said he respected it. But then he kept calling, asking if I was okay, if I felt safe after what happened. Safe, I repeated. That word again. She nodded. It stopped being therapy. It was something else. I wanted to tell you, but I thought if I admitted it, it would make it real. It already is. She wiped her eyes, then looked at me, really looked. He manipulates people, Ethan. He made me feel broken just so he could fix me. Maybe that's what he does to all his patients. She frowned. You think he's recording everyone? I don't think, I said. I know. Her expression shifted. From shame to horror to something colder. Then he's keeping those tapes for a reason. Yes, I said. And I intend to find out what it is. That night, we didn't sleep in the same bed. She stayed in the guest room. I sat in my office with the USB plugged in, the blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. I didn't play the file again. I didn't need to. What I needed was a plan. Wolfe thought he was invisible, hiding behind professionalism, intellect, and a smile designed to disarm. But every manipulator has a pattern, and patterns can be dismantled. I opened a blank notebook and started writing. Expose the recordings. Find the manuscript. Make him lose control. When I finished, I stared at the list until the letters blurred. Somewhere upstairs, Claire cried quietly. I didn't go to her, because this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was about control. And if Wolfe thought he understood power, he hadn't met me yet. Boston's skyline looked clean from a distance. That was the trick with cities, pull back far enough. And Evenrot looks like order. Mason met me at a diner near Kendall Square, the kind that hadn't changed its menu since the Reagan administration. Vinyl booths. Coffee that tasted like battery acid. He was already there, flipping through something on his tablet. You're not going to like this, he said when I slid into the booth. Try me. He turned the screen toward me. Dr. Adrian Wolfe, author. Well, almost. There's an unpublished manuscript registered with a literary agent in New York. Working title, The Anatomy of Trust. Subheading, A Therapist's Journey Through Real Marriages. My stomach went cold. Real marriages? Yeah. I pulled the synopsis from the agent's submission database. He describes it as a blend of memoir and case study, quote, based on authentic sessions with consenting couples. Consenting, I repeated, almost laughing. He's recording people and calling it consent. Not just recording. Mason scrolled down. Look here. Sample chapter titles. The Frozen Architect. The Artist Who Forgot Desire. Blueprints of Betrayal. It took a second before the realization hit. Jesus, I said. He's writing about us. Mason's mouth tightened. Looks like it. He's even shopping it around. There's a draft file registered in his cloud storage. Want me to get it? I nodded. Everything. I want proof. He leaned back, arms crossed. You sure you want to open this box? Once you do, there's no unseeing it. I've already seen the worst, I said. Now I just want to know how deep it goes. That night, Mason sent me a secure link. A single document, 230 pages. The Anatomy of Trust by Dr. Adrian Wolfe. The first line read, "Every marriage is an unfinished sentence. My work is to listen to how people try to end it." The prose was elegant, almost poetic. It made manipulation sound like art. I scrolled through names, thinly veiled by initials or altered details. But the story arcs were unmistakable. The architect husband with a precision complex. The art teacher wife starved for passion. The therapist who dared to cross the line to understand them fully. He wasn't just documenting our lives. He was romanticizing his own betrayal. In his version, Claire wasn't seduced. She was awakened. And I wasn't betrayed. I was enlightened by loss. I wanted to vomit. Claire came into my office around midnight, barefoot, wearing one of my shirts. She looked like a ghost of the woman I used to know. "What are you reading?" she asked. I turned the screen toward her. "Our Lives. Edited for publication." She blinked. "Oh my God. He's fictionalized just enough to get away with it. But anyone who knows us would recognize every detail." She sank into the chair opposite me, pressing her palms to her face. "He said he wanted to write something inspired by his work. I thought it was theoretical." "It's not theory, Claire. It's theft." She looked up, voice trembling. "What do we do?" "We play along," I said. "He wants real emotion? We'll give him a show." Her brows furrowed. "You want to trap him. I want him to incriminate himself. On record." She hesitated. "That could backfire." "Everything already has," I said. "This is just the part where we stop bleeding." Over the next week, I rehearsed. Calm, polite, disarmed. I attended another session, feigning contrition, telling Wolfe I'd been reflecting on my own emotional walls. He nodded, pleased. "You're making progress, Ethan. The awareness alone is growth." He leaned back, voice smooth. "And Claire?" "She's distant," I said carefully. "But she listens when you talk. You have a way of reaching her." He smiled, modestly at first, then let it linger. "Trust is a delicate thing. It's easier to rebuild through a neutral presence." "Neutral," I said. "Right." I placed my phone face down on my knee. The recording app was already running. By the fourth session, Wolfe had grown bolder. He started referencing archetypes. Husbands who hide behind competence. Wives who sacrifice themselves to validation. "Your dynamic," he told us, "is classic intimacy fatigue. You, Ethan, retreat into control. Claire pursues passion until she mistakes chaos for love." "Sounds like a good book title," I said. He chuckled. "You'd be surprised how much truth fits into fiction." I saw Claire stiffen beside me, just slightly. Wolfe caught it. "Claire, you're quiet." "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady but colder now. "You sound like you've written this before." His smile froze, just a fraction of a second too long. Then he said smoothly, "I suppose experience repeats itself. The patterns we study become familiar." I met his eyes. "Familiar enough to publish?" Something flickered there, just a spark of panic before he recovered. "That's an odd question, Ethan." "Not really," I said. "Writers draw from life. Therapists too, apparently." He shifted in his chair, gaze sharpening. "Are you recording this session?" The question landed heavy. I smiled. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" Silence. Then his voice colder. "I think we're done for today." Claire stood up first. "You're right," she said. "We are." We left without another word. In the car, Claire's hands trembled on the steering wheel. "You think he knows we're onto him?" "Let him know," I said. "Let him sweat." And then, I looked out the window. Wolfe's building was shrinking in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the city. "Then," I said, "we take away the one thing he can't live without." "What's that?" "Control." That night, Mason called again. "You rattled him," he said. "He's been emailing his agent all afternoon, asking to pause submissions for the book. Might mean he's panicking." "Good," I said. "Let him." "What's next?" "Next," I said, glancing at the hidden recorder on my desk. We give him enough rope. Because men like Adrian Wolfe don't fall by force. They fall by confidence. When they finally believe no one's watching. And I was watching. Every move. When predators feel observed, they change their hunt. So I stopped watching. At least, that's what I let him think. For 2 weeks, Claire and I kept the act alive. The devoted couple clawing toward reconciliation. Our faces soft. Our tones careful. We attended one last joint session with Dr. Wolfe, and I played my part with the precision of a man who'd studied blueprints his entire life. His office looked exactly as it had before, warm light, the faint hum of that white noise machine, the scent of his expensive candle-burning sandalwood into the air. But something in him had shifted. He smiled too much. He was cautious in the way a liar is cautious when he's not sure what you know. "Ethan, Claire," he greeted, voice syrupy smooth. "It's good to see both of you again. How have things been since we last spoke?" I looked at Claire, giving her the cue. She smiled gently. "Better," she said. "We've been talking more. About trust. About honesty." "That's excellent," Wolfe said. "And intimacy?" Her cheeks flushed, real or acted, I wasn't sure. "Improving." He nodded. "Progress is never linear, but I'm glad to hear that." I let a small silence grow between us before I said, "I wanted to thank you, actually. For everything." His eyebrows lifted. "Thank me. For helping me see what I was missing." He leaned forward. "And what was that?" "That trust," I said, "isn't about believing someone. It's about knowing what they'll do when you're not looking." A pause. Then his smile flickered like a faulty light. "Well," he said slowly, "that's an interesting definition." "It's yours," I replied. "From your book." The silence was sharp enough to cut through the air. He recovered fast, too fast. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My research notes." "Your manuscript," I corrected. "The one titled The Anatomy of Trust. You sent it to at least 3 publishers. It's brilliant work, really. Reads more like a confession than psychology." His jaw tightened. "You've invaded my privacy." "Funny," I said. "That's what your clients might say." For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. The charm in his voice drained out, replaced by something clinical and cold. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Ethan," he said quietly. "You think you're protecting her, but you're not. Claire needed me long before she met you. I just helped her see it." Claire's hand curled into a fist on her lap. "You manipulated me," she said, her voice trembling with something between rage and shame. "I guided you," he said. "And you were willing. Don't rewrite the story because you're uncomfortable with your choices." I leaned forward, my voice low. "You recorded us. You wrote about us. You crossed every line you swore to protect. And now you're going to pay for it." Wolfe tilted his head, studying me like a specimen. "And what exactly do you think you can do? You have no authority, no standing. If you accuse me, it's your word against mine, and trust me, I know how to make my words sound believable." He was right, of course. Men like him always were, until they weren't. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You're probably right. Except I don't need my words. I have yours." I took my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. His own voice filled the room, the audio clip from our last session. "Wolfe, you'd be surprised how much truth fits into fiction." "Me, familiar enough to publish?" "Wolfe, are you recording this session?" "Me, shouldn't I be asking you that?" The sound played like a ghost haunting him. His face drained of color. "You can't use that without consent." "Neither can you," I said. He stood abruptly, mask cracking. "You think you're clever, but you're not the first to try. Do you know what happens when people come after me? They break themselves trying. Then I'll make sure to leave the pieces where everyone can see," I said. Claire rose beside me, silent, shaking, but stronger than I'd seen her in weeks. She looked at Wolfe with something I couldn't name, maybe closure, maybe disgust. "Goodbye, Adrian," she said softly. Outside, the evening air hit like a baptism. The sun had dropped behind the buildings, and Tremont Street gleamed, wet under the streetlights. Claire exhaled shakily. "He's not going to let this go, Ethan." "Let him try," I said. "He spent years hiding behind confidentiality. Now he'll see what it's like when the curtain drops. I forwarded the recording to Mason before we'd even reached the car. He replied almost instantly, "Got it. I'll pass it to the journalist. This guy's done." That night, for the first time in months, Claire sat beside me on the couch without flinching. We didn't talk about Wolfe. We didn't talk about forgiveness either. We just sat, breathing in sync, as though remembering how silence used to feel before it became a weapon. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Men, like Adrian Wolfe, don't crumble in public. They plot in private. And the worst kind of revenge is the kind that hides behind reason. As I watched the city lights dance across her face, I realized that ending him might not be the hardest part. The hardest part would be making sure he didn't take us down with him. Boston in early summer has that strange kind of brightness that makes you doubt everything dark that's ever happened there. But light doesn't erase shadows. It just makes them sharper. It had been 9 days since we walked out of Wolfe's office. 9 days since I'd sent Mason the recording. And for 9 days, silence. Until the morning, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I answered without thinking. "Ethan Cole," a voice said, calm, deliberate, and much too familiar. "You've made a terrible mistake." "Hello, Adrian," I said. "You've been reckless. You don't understand how easily perception can turn against you. People will believe the story they want to believe. You, the jealous husband. Me, the professional trying to help your wife. Save the lecture for your publisher," I said. "I'm sure they'll love the recordings." He chuckled. "It wasn't amusement, it was control. Those tapes are inadmissible, Ethan. Illegally obtained, out of context. You think the world will side with you, but you're just another man terrified of his wife's independence." I opened my laptop, scrolling through the email thread Mason had sent, evidence, transcripts, his manuscript drafts. Independence doesn't require seduction and hidden microphones. "Neither does revenge," Wolfe said quietly. "But here we are." Then he hung up. When I turned, Claire was standing in the doorway. She'd heard enough. "Was that him?" I nodded. "What did he say?" "That we made a mistake." Her eyes darkened. "Maybe he's right." I blinked. "Excuse me." She walked closer. "I mean this, if we go public, it's his word against ours. He'll say we're unstable, that the sessions exposed pre-existing tension, that we misinterpreted him. We'll be humiliated before anyone believes us." "He's counting on that fear," I said. "That's his entire method, control through shame." She looked down. "You don't understand how good he is at it." "I understand enough." "Do you?" she snapped. "He knows my weak spots. My voice, my gestures, my past. He'll make me look complicit. He'll make me look like I wanted it." The words hung there like smoke. I moved toward her, slow. "Claire, you didn't. You were manipulated." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "You can't manipulate someone who's already lonely," she said softly. That night, Mason called again. "Your therapist's in panic mode," he said. "He's been calling his agent, his lawyer, even his board of ethics. Claims he's being harassed by a former client. Guess who?" I sighed. "He's trying to flip the narrative." Classic projection. "But there's more. You should see what he just sent the paper." He forwarded me an email. I opened it. It was a scanned letter, typed, official-looking, on Wolfe's letterhead, alleging emotional instability and harassment by a client named EC. He'd signed it, dated it, filed it to the Massachusetts Board of Psychology. "He's building a counterattack," Mason said. "If that hits the news, you're the villain." I stared at the screen. "Then we make sure his version isn't the only one." The next day, I asked Claire to meet me downtown, at the cafe across from his office. She arrived looking exhausted, her hair pulled back, her hands wrapped around a paper cup like an anchor. "We have to end this," she said immediately. "I know. Not like this, Ethan. I mean end it. No press, no lawyers. Just disappear from him. He'll move on." "You think predators move on?" She looked up sharply. "I think you're starting to sound like him." That landed harder than I expected. But before I could respond, the cafe door opened, and Wolfe walked in. For a heartbeat, none of us moved. He looked almost casual in a dark coat and scarf, as though we were just another appointment. Then he smiled that therapist smile, calm and lethal. "Claire," he said, ignoring me. "You look well." She stiffened. "Don't talk to me." He tilted his head. "You don't have to be afraid. This isn't about blame. It's about understanding what really happened." I stood, stepping between them. "You need to leave." He didn't. "You think you're protecting her, Ethan, but you're just projecting your guilt. She came to me because you made her invisible." "Don't," I said. He leaned closer. "And now every move you make to prove your worth just confirms her story, that you're obsessive, controlling, broken." My fist clenched before I even thought about it. One clean motion. Years of restraint undone. The punch landed sharp across his jaw. The cafe went silent. Wolfe staggered back, touching his lip, blood bright against his hand. Then he smiled. "There it is," he said quietly. "The real Ethan Cole." 2 hours later, a police report was filed. Assault, minor injury, public disturbance. Wolfe didn't press charges, but the report would exist. Evidence for his story. Mason called again that night. "You played right into him, man." "I know. He's going to spin this into validation. Aggressive husband assaults therapist." Perfect headline. "Let him," I said. "He wanted to write a story. I just gave him his climax." But I wasn't done. At 3 a.m, I sent an anonymous email to every editor Wolfe had pitched his manuscript to. Attached were 3 audio files, the recordings of him manipulating Claire, his laughter after my confrontation, and his own voice saying, "You'd be surprised how much truth fits into fiction." Subject line: "Truth fits into fiction, but not anymore." Within 12 hours, his publisher rescinded their interest. Within 24, the Board of Psychology had reopened the ethics complaints. By the end of the week, his name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. When I saw the article in the Boston Globe, the headline read, "Renowned therapist under investigation for patient misconduct and confidentiality breach." Claire sat beside me, reading in silence. She looked up finally. "You won." "No," I said quietly. "I survived." She nodded. "And him. He'll survive too. People like him always do. But he'll never speak in rooms like that again." She reached for my hand. "So what now?" I looked out the window at the city that had been both crime scene and confessional. "Now," I said, "we stop living inside his story." But deep down I knew the truth. Even when you win against a man like Adrian Wolfe, he leaves fingerprints on the inside of your mind. The headlines spread like a virus. By Monday, Wolfe's name was everywhere. The New York Times, the Boston Globe, even podcasts that usually fed on celebrity scandals. Words like predator, exploitation, and ethical misconduct followed him like dogs nipping at his heels. I read every article, every thread, every furious comment section. And with each one, I felt less vindicated, not more. Revenge doesn't heal. It only balances the ledger. Claire avoided the internet. She deleted her social media, stopped checking email, stopped answering calls. When I found her one morning sitting by the window with her sketchbook untouched on her knees, she looked pale, translucent, almost. "They're using my picture," she said softly. "The ones from the gallery. Someone must have leaked them." I sat beside her. "They blurred your face." "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "Anyone who knows me will know. I see myself in every article. The unnamed art teacher, the vulnerable client." "That's still me, Ethan." I reached for her hand, but she didn't take it. "I thought exposing him would make me feel safe again," she said. "Instead, I just feel naked." "You were brave," I said. "You ended him." She shook her head. "I helped him write his ending." The Globe released the final blow, an exposé titled "The Anatomy of Deceit: How Dr. Adrian Wolfe Built a Career on Other People's Pain." They published snippets of the manuscript. The part about us was there barely disguised, the architect husband, so obsessed with structure he could not feel the tremor of collapse beneath him. Another line described Claire as a woman whose longing for validation outweighed her instinct for danger. She tore the paper in half when she read it, then again, and again until it was just white dust between her fingers. "Even when he burns," she said, "he gets to have the last word." "No," I said. "Not this time." That night, I drove to Tremont Street. Wolfe's office was sealed off, police tape across the door, blinds half open like an eyelid refusing to close. Through the glass, I could see the ghost of his world still there. The rug, the chair, the tower of books. I let myself in through the side entrance Mason had told me about. The air inside was stale, forgotten incense, and old varnish. On the desk, beneath a layer of dust, lay a stack of papers. His manuscript draft. The original. I took it. Outside, the wind caught the pages, scattering a few across the street. They fluttered like birds before settling in a puddle, ink bleeding into the water. By the time I got home, I already knew what I was going to do. I went into the backyard, set up a metal bin, and struck a match. Claire stood beside me in her coat, silent. The flame caught fast, dry paper, cheap bindings. The words curled into ash, the paragraphs disintegrating into glowing veins of orange. I could see the titles burning. Blueprints of Betrayal, The Frozen Architect, The Art of Need. Claire watched, tears on her cheeks catching the firelight. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's over," I said. But even as the last page turned to cinders, I knew that wasn't true. 2 days later, Wolfe made a statement from his lawyer's office. A short video, composed, rehearsed, his voice calm as ever. He didn't deny the recordings. He reframed them. "Boundary testing for research purposes," he said. "Consensual exploration in the context of mutual understanding." He painted himself not as a villain, but as a misunderstood innovator. Some people believed him. Some always will. But within a week, his license was suspended. His publisher cut ties. His reputation gone. The world had moved on, leaving him a cautionary tale told in lowered voices. That weekend, Claire and I drove north to Gloucester. We hadn't been there in years. The ocean was gray and violent, waves breaking hard against the rocks. We stood at the edge of a cliff, salt wind cutting through us. "Do you think people can start over?" she asked. I took a long breath. "Starting over isn't the same as going back." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe we don't start over. Maybe we just begin again." "From where?" I asked. "From what's left." I reached for her hand. This time she took it. The water below roared, swallowing the sound of everything else. For the first time in months, the silence between us didn't feel like an ending. It felt like space, like air returning to a collapsed room. It was early autumn when I went back to Tremont Street. The air carried that faint metallic chill that always arrives before October fully commits, and the city felt cleaner than it should have, as though time had rinsed it of everything that happened here. The building was the same. The florist still smelled like honey and damp leaves. The same barista across the street still wrote misspelled names on paper cups. Only the brass plaque beside the office door was different now. Dr. Adrian Wolfe, Side D, had been unscrewed, leaving 4 small holes in the wall like a ghost's eyes. I told myself I came to make peace with it, to see the place empty, to confirm that he was truly gone. But part of me just wanted to stand inside that room and breathe without fear. The door was unlocked. It always was. Inside, the space was stripped bare. No books, no rug, no candle-burning sandalwood to hide the scent of guilt. Only dust where the furniture had stood, and a single chair in the corner. The same shape, but not the same one. The walls still remembered the sound of him. If you listened long enough, you could almost hear the whisper of that white noise machine, the faint echo of practiced empathy. I sat down on the chair. The leather creaked like memory. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the silence speak. And then, without knowing why, I started talking. "Hi, Adrian," I said quietly. "Thought I'd drop by for one last session." The words hung there, absurd and hollow, but necessary. "You were right about one thing," I continued. "Trust isn't about believing someone. It's about what they do when you're not looking." I glanced toward the shelf where his recorder used to sit. "That's why you lost. Because you couldn't stop looking." I reached into my pocket and took out a small object, a USB drive. The last copy of his voice, the last recording I hadn't deleted. For weeks I'd kept it hidden, not sure if I wanted to destroy it or keep it. Proof or closure. I placed it on the floor. Then I stepped on it. Hard. The plastic cracked beneath my heel, the sound sharp and final. Outside, Boston was alive again. The world had already forgotten his name. People laughed on their phones, taxis honked. The city continued its endless rehearsal of indifference. At the corner, a busker played a slow tune on a violin, something mournful, familiar, unpretentious. Claire was waiting at the cafe across the street, a book in her lap, hair pulled back by the wind. She looked up when she saw me, and smiled, small, genuine, fragile but real. When I sat down beside her, she said, "Did you find what you needed?" I nodded. An empty room. That's enough. For now. She closed the book and reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady. Not like before, not like the past, just here, in the moment. We sat like that for a long time, watching the street where our lives had broken and begun again. Finally, she whispered, "You know, if you ever go back to therapy, you should probably pick a woman this time." I laughed. A quiet, honest laugh. "Maybe I'll just try talking to you instead." The light changed across the street, golden and soft, wrapping the world in a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since it all began, I didn't feel like someone else's character. I felt unwritten. And that, I realized, was what healing really was, not the erasure of pain, but the choice to stop rehearsing it. As we stood to leave, I looked once more toward Wolfe's old window, the place where trust had burned and truth had survived. Then I turned away. The city swallowed the last echo of that story. And finally, so did I.